Well, I am here with Christian Dean, a friend of mine that I've gotten a chance to know for about a year and a half now. And Christian, it's so interesting how we met, man. We were doing an event. I believe I was on a panel or something. It was an entrepreneurship event, right? A business event.
Absolutely.
And we met. And what was your impression? What was going on when we met?
The whole room was filled with pretty interesting people. So I guess my initial thought was, man, this guy definitely takes the cream on the top. He is such a fascinating person. And I mean, you truly are a wonder, David. So it was cool to be able to meet you and just observe you.
Well, I was put in that panel with very influential people. These are people that are seven-figure earners, software developers, bankers, that whole thing. But again, my whole message is always the same: is how do I engage with the audience? And I believe that's kind of been the journey, because when we met, you were actually speaking with another person, and it was really interesting how you were chatting with somebody you never knew, you just met for the first time, but you had an amazing conversation. I was like like a fly on the wall, kind of listening to it, and then after that, we decided to connect and share our information. And then you came to the studio and we were talking about it, and then you were trying to tell me about what you did. And but again, I told you about my story, and that changes everything, right? Because not everybody can get insured today, right? But then I also found out, I think I asked you, I said, well, tell me why you're doing this. And then tell me a little bit about your background, because you told me about your high school years, but how did you get into this financial, that you wanted to be a financier or a financial mentor to people? Tell me a little bit about your background in high school and college, because you went to an amazing college too. So
Yeah, go Seminoles. Absolutely. I think for me, it was interesting being able to get to college, not know a single person there, and be totally frightened by the fact that it was a fresh new beginning. And I had already come with the mindset of wanting to be a cardiothoracic surgeon. So for me, it was being able to help people and make a good amount of money doing it. And I thought medicine is such a fascinating. I love Grey's Anatomy. I know it's pretty strange for for a young kid just going into college to like a show like that, but I was fascinated by the scenes where they were in the operating room and cutting someone open and really dissecting and trying to save someone's life. And when it came down to it, physics and I didn't see eye to eye. It was either me or it was the Russian professor who only spent about 15 or 20 minutes with a very thick accent in the front of class before passing it off to his teaching assistant. So I'm going to choose to think it was him, not me. And I just realized that medicine may not be for me. Overall, I wanted to help people and make money, but really the passion to help people could be applied in other assets.
How did you come up with that? The cardio, how do you say that again?
It's cardiothoracic surgeon.
Yeah,
you got to break it down in 3 syllables. Cardiothoracic surgeon. I could say it, cardiothoracic surgeon, real quick. Just because it was something I wanted to do for a really long time.
Were your parents in some medicine? Anything with medicine?
I don't know if it was just being the parents of 2 immigrants that I ended up wanting to pursue medicine to make them proud, right? Because that is a sure as set career that you will succeed. It may take you a long time and it may cost you a lot of money, but all surgeons make in 6-figure income without a problem within a couple years out of medical school. So I think part of me just wanted to make my family happy, and I thought it'd be pretty cool too. But then I realized I wasn't built for that. I'm too social of a person, and I can't be trapped inside of an operating room and just with a mask on and only talking to the people in there. I need to be out there and communicating and just talking to everyone.
What was your dad? You said immigrants. What's your parents' background?
Well, I'm half Cuban and then half Indian. So I was born here. My hardware is born in the United States, and my software is 50-50. So overall, being the first generation American, it was a lot of pressure. I think growing up, even though my parents were very well established here, it was still, I was the first one here, born and raised, to make it happen. And when it came down to it, I really just want to make my parents proud. I still do to this day. Every day I wake up and it's a goal to not only win for myself, but to win for my family.
Now, we certainly want our parents. That's one of the things that I talk about as a coach or a mentor. Whose approval are we looking for? And it's usually the people that are closest to us. It's always internal relationships, right? What did your dad do? What did he do for a living?
My father was an entrepreneur, so I think that in part was what caused me to switch from my cardiothoracic pursuit to now into an entrepreneurship field where I saw my father build from the ground up an aviation business, teaching people how to become airline pilots. And over time, he went from renting airplanes to teach people to owning a fleet of 50 plus aircrafts, right? We had over 20 something employees. We had our own maintenance department. And I saw him build from nothing to just something so big. And over 20 years, it took him a lot of time, but he made it happen. And my mom, she helped him build along the way. She was truly the one that pushed him to do it. She helped by liquidating a portion of her 401k back in the day and helped fund his dream. And it really was a family effort. I came into the picture probably almost 10 years or 5 years after, and it was still shaky, right? Because any entrepreneur knows that it is difficult to make a business for yourself. But my dad was passionate. Right, and I think that was definitely a characteristic he imparted into me, was a burning desire to succeed and to care for others.
So talk about investment, right? Talk about investment. Selflessness, right? Your mom deciding to invest not just in your dad, but in a business that she probably didn't know anything about it, right? She didn't know anything about that type of business, or did she?
No, she was a bank teller for many years. She worked with Bank of America, and she didn't really have a lot of entrepreneurship experience. She had grown up seeing my grandpa own a pharmacy, so she actually had some idea of what it took to really own something and to operate it, which is why I think she helped a lot on the operational side. But I think it was a team effort. My dad would not have been able to do it without my mom, 100,000%. So I'm grateful for that true discipline that they instilled in me from a young age, because at any point when things got difficult, they could have quit. They could have closed the school down. They had offers to buy out the company, and they could have sold and just collected their money and moved on. But they kept pursuing it because they were passionate. My dad loved what he did. And I think that was something that translated into me and a lot of what I do today.
Well, I also think that selflessness and also knowing that investment pays off in the long run. You actually have an experience. So, we talk about logic a lot sometimes, and logic is knowledge and experience. And you were able to learn certain things about the business, I'm assuming, because you were part of it as a teenager. But then the other part is to learn the background, that there was an investment that was made, there was a thought process, and then, of course, there was the hard work. Right. So that taught you a lot. So that makes you a little bit logical for you, but for a lot of people, they'll probably look at you and say, why are you doing what you're doing? Right. So, so that's the interesting part of it, but you have that experience, you have that knowledge. So the question I want to know is, so did you become a pilot since your dad was teaching everybody else? Were you a pilot?
I have my pilot's license.
Come on.
So I have over 250 flight hours. So I've been in the plane since I was but a wee lad. I mean, I think my first flight must have been when I was 6 years old, maybe 4 or 5, 6 years old. I was too young to remember, but I do remember just growing up, always being around airplanes. Now, when the political climate in our country changed, so did my parents' business. And when it came down to it, they actually had to close their school down right as I was starting to become of the age where I can go and get my pilot's licenses and complete everything. Because I had not finished everything before the financial situation of our business changed, I only was able to do one portion, but I know it sounds crazy. Flying a plane is like riding a bike. It's a skill that once you learn, you can never forget. You just have to sharpen up a little bit. And obviously, it's a lot easier to ride a bike than it is to fly a plane, but it is easy to go ahead and sharpen that tool again and be able to become comfortable. And it is something I hope to go back to one day, but I wasn't as passionate about it as I think my father was.
Yeah, he turned it into a business because that was a way that he could change lives. because he was changing a lot of lives, right? He was giving people an opportunity to make a living and also, support their own families, right? So one of the things I think probably, I don't know how many people ask you this. So what is the view from a pilot? Like when you get in a plane and you actually are the one that has to land it, has to take off. I know the view from a aisle seat. I also know the view from the window seat. What is your view from the pilot's seat? What do you see, and what is something about that experience that you can tie into life experience?
I think it's a sense of control. When you're in the pilot seat, you are at the helm of your future, of the plane, of fate. Anything happens, you have to be in control, and you have to have your sharpest tool of your mind at 100%. And when you're in the back, you can chill. When you're at the window seat, you can enjoy the view. And it's definitely nice to be able to enjoy that. But it's another skill set when it comes down to being in the front of the plane and being in control of everything, right? And the view is truly spectacular. I mean, it's honestly breathtaking and sometimes underappreciated, because so many times you might only be in the front that you forget what it's like to not be. But you see everything, right? And when you can see everything, that's when you know you can make the best decisions.
Ooh, that's a great point. When you see everything, you can make the best decision. And most of us, we don't get to see everything, right? We have to rely on faith, or we have to rely on hope, right? So that's interesting about that. You said that. That's a really great point, man. That's a tweetable moment for sure. Or whatever they call it now, right? But I will say this, man. Thank you for that. That was really a powerful statement as well. But in life, just like in a plane, sometimes something happens, right? And it takes you out of control, right? At that moment. Did you ever practice any of those things? Like if something went wrong, or I love when people say that we couldn't get the wheels down. We can. I know they call it something different. I forgot, but
yeah, the landing gear.
The landing gear. Thank you for correcting me. Now I learned for something more. When you practice those things, how were you able to handle it? Because I mean, you're still learning.
The amount of times that my dad or the other instructors I worked with would just cut the power from the plane and say, all right, it's an emergency. What do we do? And you had to, on the spot, do your ABCs. A, make sure that you took control of the airplane. B, look for the best place to land. C, go ahead and try to get everything up and functioning again. I don't think those are the exact ways of the letters, but I think the gist of it, it's correct enough where you have to be on point. Right. And I think a lot of times it's a skill set where you have to be also ready for an emergency, because if anything happens that's out of your control, whether it's a bird strike or you miss something in your pre-check, anything could happen that can take it from being in perfect control and perfect vision of your future to chaos. Right. And chaos tends to wreak havoc.
Well, I can tell you, man, I know. I thought I was in control for most of my life until I was diagnosed with cancer. So I think that was chaos for me for sure. And there's nothing you can control about it, right? Because now everyone else is giving you their opinion, or if it's a doctor that's giving you what they're meant to. So the thing about this, like, you were able to prepare for something, right? And as I look, I remember talking to you about the name of your company. You wanted to protect people. You wanted people to prosper. But the biggest thing for you was protect people. And isn't part of it like protecting them from themselves sometimes? Like, because again, you don't know when something is going to happen that you're not going to have any control.
Mm-hmm.
So why did you pick that name, Protect and Prosper?
Well, I originally was working in the financial planning space, and I really wanted to have that same impact that I so effectively witnessed with my family, where we had to be protected. My dad had a heart attack, major heart attack, when he was 62. He's 66 now. He became disabled. He's had open heart surgery multiple times. He had a defibrillator placed in his chest. He had a stents, bypass surgery done. It was a lot. And back as an entrepreneur, when he owned his business, he had a random insurance agent walk in and just offer an opportunity to review his policies and plans. Because if you're an entrepreneur and you don't take care of yourself, no one will. So witnessing firsthand the effect that that gentleman's planning, the the pure will of him to say, let me go reach out to this family here in this business and to offer them assistance in something that most people tend to put off on the back burner. I witnessed firsthand what it takes to really succeed.
So, Christian, you mentioned your father and what he went through, but then you kind of told a little bit of the story of an agent that he was in. Now, was your dad ever talking about having life insurance or anything like that?
I know that they had life insurance. I know they originally had gotten it when they got married before I was even in the picture. In case something happened, they want to make sure that they could have the house paid off. And then when we were born, they got some extra insurance just in case something were to happen. And then they got policies on my sister and I. Not that they expected us to pass away anytime soon, but as a vehicle of saving money to help us just for the future be able to have some money in a safe asset like a life insurance policy. So growing up, no, I didn't ever really notice that. And my parents were always cautious of the stock market. So I knew the insurance was the only type of investment to like assets that we had. But no, they never really discussed it. It was more of a necessity that was unspoken of.
It's interesting because I don't talk to too many people that really look at life insurance or any type of insurance that way, right? Mm-hmm. Medical insurance, we have to have it because of, well, especially even today. But I'm saying when we talk about life insurance, most of the people I talk to, either their parents had it, but most people my age or even younger, they don't really know what that is, right? Yeah. So for me, like listening to you, I'm learning, to be honest with you. Every time that we get a chance to talk or we do an event together or something happens, you actually teach, and you're teaching me a lot more because you don't just do life insurance. You have other things, mm-hmm. Like living benefits, which that I do know from experience. There's a friend of mine that I always call, he's my living benefit, right? So it's interesting that your father and your mother always had that engraved in them, right? That they learned that from a young age and they thought about family. But you also said investment. That's an interesting term. So how does that become an investment? I mean, I get it, but if you die, but I'm saying you said it's an investment in what way?
Well, I think the government overall is not a big fan of financial literacy and promoting financial literacy, especially in the socioeconomic middle class. So when it came down to it, my parents were entrepreneurs, which helped them, or they always had that entrepreneurial mindset, which allowed them to kind of see a little bit past having insurance through work. Because with life insurance, you could rent it or you could own it. If it were up to the government, everyone would rent it because then they never, ever, ever have to pay out a true life claim to create generational wealth like the Rockefellers, like McDonald's. They knew what they were doing because someone had shown them. But if you don't seek that knowledge for yourself, you'll never know that life insurance can be an investment. And when it comes down to it, the same way when you buy a home and you make every single mortgage payment and you build equity in that, and that's an asset, life insurance functions in the same way when you own it, except you don't have to get in a gigantic mortgage and become now a big caliber of debt. You're getting to a big caliber of protection. And slowly, the savings account starts accumulating money. So over time, not only are you protected in case you get sick or you pass away, but you know that you're building a more financially secure future. And whether it's a whole life or an index universal, it's all fancy terms for building generational wealth.
I like how you said generational wealth. That's a term that, my parents always talked about and my friends talk about, and me being an entrepreneur my whole life and being a consultant and running businesses my whole life, that's one of those things that I don't know if the young generation is thinking that way anymore. I look at the older generation to think about generational wealth because, again, it's the hard work, but it's the sacrifice that they made, right? Mm-hmm. But let's go back a little bit because as you were talking about, I was talking about control, and you were talking about, you mentioned your dad, but you mentioned that this gentleman came into your business, and he, I guess, was able to do something or convince your dad or show your dad something that your dad decided to do. And then because he did that, your family is still okay. Right. Mm-hmm. So can you share that moment? Like, did your dad ever share a little bit about that connection? Because I believe in divine appointments. A lot of my friends know that divine appointments, divine intervention. I believe that my friend who was my living benefit was a divine intervention, at a moment where I needed. I didn't have life insurance. I didn't have a lot of things. I had health insurance, but I was going through a death sentence after death sentence. And he was my living benefit. And maybe you can share a little bit more clear what a living benefit is. But first of all, tell me a little bit about that moment, and how do you feel about that? And, well, I mean, I'm assuming that's what got you to do this.
Yeah.
So
it definitely was. It's so many people have benefits through work. You have life insurance, disability insurance, you have health insurance that's obviously required, but no one really talks about the disability or life side of things. And most people, when they do work at some place for many, many years and then they retire, now they're left overpaying for insurance. And my father, as an entrepreneur, and having a small business, he had someone that took the time to come to his business and speak to them about that insurance planning. And thankfully, my father was able to have a conversation with my mom and this insurance agent and take the time that they needed to get off the roller coaster of being an entrepreneur and owning your own life and your own business to plan for the unexpected. And what I noticed was that if he hadn't taken that chance, I would be in a different financial spot today than we could have been.
How did that change your outlook when you were looking to becoming you went to FSU, you went to the Seminoles, and you wanted to become a financial mentor, right? So how did that change your mindset from thinking about helping other people with their finances to helping people actually protect and prosper, both of them?
Protect and prosper. I think one of the biggest things was seeing the individual effect that agent had on my parents' life. If it would have been any different, I don't know where we would be right now, but the way that my father's health conditions came about, I noticed that I was a lot more caring for the consumer. Even the other day, having breakfast with a very successful group benefit planner, hearing him talk about a potential opportunity in his business, it didn't strike that same passion that I have for helping people individually as a family with their own personal financial future. I truly love being able to have that same impact, and thankfully I haven't had to pay any death claims or any disability claims yet, just because I'm still relatively new in the field in this specific broker capacity. But I know the day is bound to come. We are going to die someday. And 1 in 3 people will suffer a major illness before passing away. So it's going to happen, and I know that the work I'm doing now will help them in the future. But that was really what geared me from working in finance, just being a person that would create money to better the planet, which was my original intention. I'm like, okay, money is fun. I like working with them and helping make it, but I wanted to have that same financial impact in an individual's life. And now slowly I'm working to really help business owners the same way that my father had that help all that time ago.
Well, I think everything is an experience. We go right back to that. We have to experience things in life. My life changed because of a terminal illness, terminal cancer. I'm a very different person. You never met me before that. Yeah, certain things about me are still the same. My energy level or who I am in terms of, gifts and talents or things like that I have. But I look at life very differently. I make different choices now. I tend to learn more about things like what you're doing because it will help somebody that maybe didn't have the intervention that I had, right? Mm-hmm. So you become the intervention, the divine intervention in their lives. And you get into this field, and what's your experience been truly? Like, has your experience been easy? Are people always, accepting everything you say? Or it's just a lot of questions or a lot of uncertainty about the work you're doing?
I think the biggest thing is fear. People are fearful of the uncertain, but more importantly, that people are afraid of what they don't know. And one of the biggest things when it comes down to is just spending time educating on the different possibilities, on ways to better protect yourselves. And I think that helps really calm down a lot of that fear. But yeah, I'm
afraid. No, fear is real, right? Everyone, some people are afraid of success, some people are afraid of failure, but certainly fear of the unknown it's a big part of it, right? I think people are not educated on what you can actually do for them. So what are some of the policies that you believe everyone should have? Just basic.
Everyone should have privately owned life insurance. The benefits through work are fantastic. Take advantage of them. But I know most people don't want to work forever, right? And one of the biggest mistakes I see is that people wait until they're retiring to purchase a permanent life insurance plan. I've never met anyone that doesn't want to create generational wealth. It's a dream for everyone. The financial requirements to create that generational wealth have increased by 5 times what it could have cost if they would have just started a little bit earlier. The best time to buy life insurance was yesterday. The second best time to buy life insurance is today. And even today sometimes can be a little bit too late, where I'll speak to people who are 60, 65, and they're thinking that they can get a rate for someone who is in their 30s or 40s. But unfortunately, life does not work that way. And it's that lack of education, going back to our government, which has just been a long-term problem because they don't want to create generational wealth. There's a reason they don't teach financial literacy in school. You learn about economics, but most people don't know how credit works. Most people don't know how debit works. I talk to a lot of young people all the time who put everything on their debit card. Hello? You gotta have a layer of security. Don't you want those points? Don't you want to be able to grow your credit and create something bigger than yourself? Now, don't rely on credit, but it is a important asset. Even though it's a liability, it is an asset when you use it correctly.